โมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนัมมัสสามิ So, blessings, good evening to you all. Another opportunity for us to come together to meditate, chant, listen to the teachings. One way they talk about this, the practice of the Dhamma, is it's a way of developing noble wealth or noble treasure, as opposed to the material wealth that we're normally engaged in seeking out and acquiring. The Buddhist teachings encourage us to see the importance of developing ourselves internally as well as externally in life. Most of the cultural inputs we have, our education, the influence of the media and so on, is directed towards encouraging us to accumulate wealth, material wealth, and various experiences and pleasures and things that are based on that. Not entirely, but that's a big part of our experience as human beings. So often we will tend to neglect the development of our inner wealth or noble wealth. So it's important to have times where we do come back to the practice of meditation, listening to the Dhamma, reading the Dhamma, to help direct some of our energy, physical and mental energy, back towards developing these inner qualities which the Buddha and our teachers encouraged us to see are maybe in the long run more valuable to us than the external wealth and the experiences of the world we can find. The noble wealth that the Buddha talked about, one way he classified it, the 7 qualities, that is sattha, the faith in the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, faith in the teachings, faith in the practice. It's a quality, it's an inner treasure. So if you have a lot of faith, you're wealthy spiritually. When your faith is waning, you're losing it, well, you're becoming poorer. The second noble treasure is sila, that awareness and practice of sila, morality, the awareness of other people, other beings in this world, and developing the intention not to deliberately harm others through speech, through actions, and developing a sense of care and compassion for the other creatures, human and otherwise, that inhabit the world. This is a wealth, again, a form of wealth. When you have sila in your heart, then you naturally incline towards kindness and compassion, respect for other forms of life, incline towards behavior that is mindful, done with awareness, with understanding, and shy away from behavior that directly harms oneself or others. So this is considered an inner wealth, something we have to keep cultivating more, so it's not like you just have it once and then it's there forever. Something we have to keep coming back to in our practice, reflecting on our relationship, particularly with other people and the environment around us, and observing ourselves in that relationship to see where we sometimes need to improve what we say, what we do, where over time we might recognize how we're harming ourselves or others and then need to adjust. But the more we understand this, the importance of this, developing an awareness of what harms ourselves and what harms others, and then avoiding that, we become wealthier, richer. The next two qualities are very closely linked. Hiriya ottappa, sense of shame and fear of wrongdoing. And this is these two qualities particularly are based on an understanding of karma. Study and reflection on karma and developing that awareness that our actions through body, speech or mind have consequences. Good actions lead to good consequences, bad action leads to bad consequences. And so these two qualities are like the guardians that oversee the mind and what we decide to do, our thoughts and then our actions and speech. And again, shying away from holding on to views and opinions that will lead to negative karma, speaking in ways that are negative, lead to the harm of others, and acting in ways that lead to the harm of ourselves or others. Constantly reviewing and being on guard not to fall into ways that harm ourselves or others. And there's a lot that we can do in ways that are very subtle, we often miss. Most people understand to kill another person is bad, to be avoided. Most of the time people understand that. But sometimes there's much more subtle negative karma we can fall into, our opinions and our views about things in the world, what is right or wrong for me, what is good and bad. And these two qualities, the sense of shame and fear of wrongdoing, help to oversee that so that we don't fall into prejudice or views that will lead to our harm, misunderstanding things, thinking that what is wrong is actually right or what is right is actually wrong, and so on. One of the ways we develop Hiriya ottappa, the Buddha said once when he was teaching his son, he said you have to be able to reflect. We use this word reflect. It means to look back at yourself. And so the Buddha said, like we use a mirror or anything that's reflective to see ourselves. So like holding up a mirror to look at your own, particularly your own thoughts, your own state of mind, and with awareness of karma, what is good and bad karma, to be able to recognize bad karma that is forming in your mind, negative thoughts rooted in greed, anger, delusion, to recognize that and then act appropriately. With this mirror, the ability to reflect back, look back on ourselves to say, oh, this is bad, this is leading to my suffering, this is to be abandoned, given up, I must work with this. We're not always able to give things up quickly, but at least to have the right attitude. This is something to be careful of. This way of thinking, this view I have, it's something to be careful of, something to be not act on. Don't say everything that comes into your mind, that kind of thing. So learning to have the ability to reflect, or a mirror, to be able to hold up the mirror of the mind. Another thing which will help this, the fifth of the seven noble treasures, is what we call Bahu Sutta. So it's, seeing the value of learning, of study, listening to Dhamma, reading the Dhamma. To progress in our practice, following the Buddhist path, we have to listen, we have to learn. We don't necessarily need to learn all the time. We don't have to have read every sutta or every word that the Buddha taught, but to have that interest to be learning both from our experience and from the external sources, from teachers, and from the suttas, from the scriptures. If one just cuts it all out, then that's a very dangerous position to be in, because then one is maybe just exposed to anything, and unfortunately that is what we're exposed to all the time now in the world with modern technology, communication technology. We're exposed to so much, and some of it is junk, rubbish, some of it is very good, all the information we receive on a daily basis. But we have to be able to learn how to learn, to be able to sift through what is wisdom, what is conducive to our well-being, the well-being of others in terms of teachings, theories, information we receive, what is not good, what not conducive to our happiness, but to keep doing that. It's not something, learning is not something in the term, the way the Buddha was meaning. Learning is not something you just do, at school, and then when you quit school, yee-hee, I don't have to learn anymore and forget all about learning in the world. It's an ongoing process, and it's something we should take an interest in, what information we're absorbing from other people, from the web, from books, from whatever source. And then learning how to internalize that as well. The process of learning is, you receive information through your ears, your eyes, and so on, but then internally you're processing it as well, what you actually think, what you remember, what you think. So following the Buddhist path, you really are learning and being open to learning right to the end of your days. It's not something you can just say, I quit when I quit school and that was it. That sounds nice, but then you get lazy and complacent. We're learning all the time because our senses are open to information all the time. It's right to the last day of your life, usually speaking. You can see, you can hear, you can learn new things. And if you think about it, that's a wonderful thing, that you can still learn and practice the Dhamma right to the last day of your life. And when people are on their deathbed, sometimes they invite monks to go and teach them. If they already have a foundation in learning, in the sense they've already heard Dhamma, contemplated and reflected on Dhamma through their life, then it's not hard to stimulate the Dhamma again. So don't underestimate learning as a part of the practice, even though it sounds boring, or when we associate it with our memories of school, we might think, learning, I don't want to learn anymore. But this is learning the very best things, the things that will help you to find peace and happiness. So don't ignore that. I often quote the story of just before I came to Melbourne from Thailand. There's one family who used to come to the monastery, and has 3 children, and their mother had been in hospital for about a year. And she was a Buddhist who had attended Buddhist monasteries, practiced dana and sila and meditation all her life, listened to Dhamma all her life. So she was familiar with all those things. But the last year of her life, she became silent and semi-paralyzed. I can't remember exactly what the physical condition was, but she was hospitalized, in bed, not speaking. She wasn't in a coma, but she wasn't very reactive to the world, and her children obviously were concerned about this. It was going on and on for many months, and eventually they started to play CDs of Ajahn Chah's Dhamma talks to her. And after not very long at all, listening to Ajahn Chah's Dhamma talks every day, it seemed to spark the Dhamma in her. She was remembering, the themes, the teachings that Ajahn Chah taught. Her eyes opened, she brightened, and she even started talking again. So that by the time she did eventually pass away, because this was a terminal condition, but by the time she passed away, her mind had become totally brightened and alive again, as it were, with the power of Dhamma. And part of that is just learning, the ability to learn the Dhamma, open to the Dhamma, hear it, reflect on it. The Dhamma has a miraculous side to it. It's one of the powers of the human mind is to be able to absorb Dhamma, reflect on it, and then change mentally, change even physically sometimes. It can have that effect. Often people talk about the miracles of the Dhamma. They like to hear about stories from the time of the Buddha, people displaying psychic powers and levitating and reading minds and all those kind of things. And they are one part of the mind, the training of the mind. But the real miracle of the Dhamma is the ability to help us awaken to truth and free the mind from suffering. And so the process of learning is supporting that. So it's a treasure. The learning, the information we've gained, the ability to reflect on it, and the ability to gain more information is always like a treasure to us. The sixth of these seven noble treasures is chaka, which means literally generosity, sacrifice, the ability to practice generosity in your life. Why is that important? Well, in one sense it's important because if you're practicing generosity, you have to be able to recognize that there are other people in the world around you. When we are more introverted or stingy, we're just thinking of ourselves. And our mind kind of is turning in on itself, becomes more self-centered, selfish, generally not so happy. And it's not in line with the Dhamma anymore, it's not in line with the truth. When you have the awareness of the importance of generosity, it implies many things. One is the recognition that I don't live in this world alone. Everything I have and use has come from other people. We have that delusion that we're the owner of everything we buy. I earn money, I work, I earn money, I can buy things, this is mine, my property, my possessions, my experiences that I've paid for. But none of that you actually really produced yourself, did you? We earn money and we exchange that for products and services and experiences, and that's an agreed thing, and it's a useful way that the world works. But we depend on other people all the time, from day one, from our parents. Through our lives, we depend on others for information, education, the clothes we wear, the food we eat. We didn't produce all that. Other people were involved in the production of that. And so the practice of generosity is opening up to the fact that we live in the world, we share the world. We share the resources of the world, the land of the world, everything in this world we share with others. And when you practice generosity, that's acknowledging that fact, and also comes back to realizing, well, how much do you actually need as a human being? As a human being, we don't need a lot to be healthy and comfortable and happy. And one of the tendencies of the human mind is to fall into greed and craving all the time, always wanting more. It's an addiction that we don't see or we don't know how to remedy half the time. But when you start to practice generosity, it makes you very aware of how much you don't need. And you can give away a lot more than you have, or you can always share something with what you have. And there's no limit to that. You can always find a little bit to share with others. And it's a treasure in the sense it supports us internally as well as externally. Externally, when you practice generosity, it brings you a lot of friends. develops a lot of good relationships, sets up a lot of good causes and conditions in the world when we share with others, help others as well as ourselves. But internally, it uplifts the mind, buoys the mind. At very least, gives you a lot of good memories when you've practiced generosity. But it helps us to let go. And we've all heard, we know the essence of the Buddhist path is letting go of the causes of suffering, which is ignorance, craving and attachment. And even though many of us come to Buddhism through meditation and learning meditation on retreats and learning the techniques of samatha and vipassana, all very good, but the practice of generosity is vital to success in that as well. And it's a treasure. Once you've established good habits of generosity, which like any of these other treasures can go up and down, so you can lose it as well. You can become very self-centered and stingy again, or become generous again. But once you've established it more and more in your life, it brings you a lot of joy, happiness, and it's developing the muscle, the mental muscle of letting go. Because if you're going to practice meditation to let go of attachments that cause us suffering, attachment to thoughts and feelings and this body and the sense of self, well, the practice of generosity is preparing you for that. So when you help somebody else, you're already letting go of something, aren't you? You're letting go of your more selfish interests at that moment. You're letting go of physical possessions, you're letting go of some greed, you're letting go of maybe some anger as well. Maybe you practice generosity with someone you don't like, somebody who's hurt you, and you feel better. Your mind improves in that situation. It's not being weak or letting someone else get the better of you. If you let go of your anger through practicing forgiveness and letting go of whatever ill will you are holding on to in a situation, you improve, your life improves. So it's like a treasure. You've always got a source of happiness, even when facing difficult situations. Like I was telling the Anagarika yesterday. Yesterday I was walking along and got charged by a duck. 2 ducks who have been camping out next to this meditation hall. So I walk past them every day, and the male duck is acting very much like a male at the moment, protecting his wife. So he saw me coming. I was trying to avoid them, but he got upset with me. Maybe he felt I was a threat to his wife. So he charged me. Luckily, he wasn't able to inflict much damage. I just stood there and forgave him and laughed, and so he backed off. Maybe that's a small act of generosity or forgiveness on my part, but you get the point. It's going on every day, isn't it? People annoy us, hurt us, exploit us, take advantage of us. We've probably done that to others as well. So if you can practice the generosity of forgiveness, it lightens your mind, heals your mind quickly. So that's one form of letting go. And then particularly generosity of sharing, giving to others. We're letting go of our attachments. The last of these 7 treasures is panya, wisdom. And this is particularly the wisdom of understanding the Four Noble Truths more and more, taking them on as a practice in your life, understanding what is suffering, what's its nature, what's its cause, recognizing that craving and attachment is the cause of suffering, and then practicing accordingly, again developing the wisdom to let go of craving and attachment when you see it. And we don't always see it, it's tricky, but when you do see it, to at least know what you should do with it, which is let go. And experiencing the cessation of suffering, knowing that when you've let go, you have let go, at least in that moment, temporary moment, you've let go of some greed or some aversion or some fear or worry, and then experiencing the calm that comes when you've let go, if only for a short period of time. That's the third noble truth, and it's the truth of cessation of suffering. Becoming familiar with that, knowing, oh, I've let go, at this moment my mind is peaceful. The more you become familiar with the peace of letting go, the easier it is to do it again in the future. And the last is knowing the path of practice. Some of these things I've just been talking about, sila, samadhi, panya, developing right view, right thought, right action, right effort, right mindfulness. So wisdom is a treasure. It's probably, in the end, it's the most useful treasure we have, because it's that quality that sees suffering and what we need to do to end suffering as an experience. And the more we employ wisdom and look for wisdom in our life, in our minds, in our hearts, the richer we become. Because once you have some understanding how to look after your mind, your heart, and remedy suffering when it comes up, then wherever you go, you've got that. That's yours, your real possession, your real treasure, your real wealth. So the purpose of this teaching on noble treasure, noble wealth, is one, all these qualities ennoble your mind. They raise your mind up, improve your mind, improve your experience of life. And the other one is that they're really what you really own. They're your real treasure, because external treasure, unreliable, as we can see at the moment. The economy, unreliable. Our wealth goes up and down. Hopefully you've got enough wealth for the basics in life, because that is essential. But the extras, the luxuries, the additional wealth, are very unpredictable, unreliable. You have a job, you lose it. You have wealth, you have money, you lose it. We're all experiencing that in one way or another at the moment. External wealth is not ultimately reliable. Internal wealth, much more reliable. So you can see the Buddha was encouraging us to value this inner wealth and value the development of wealth, just as we seek wealth externally and base much of our life around that. Working to earn money, to pay the bills, try and make things as comfortable as we can for ourselves, for our families, always thinking with one eye on the future, have enough security, financial security or wealth for the future. We tend to think like that, but then we often just forget the inner wealth and don't realize that's just as important. And it's one of the jobs of monks and nuns to teach you this, remind you of this, because we don't have much external wealth. We have a set of robes, a bowl, not much. But we're reminding you to develop the inner wealth, because in the long run that's going to bring you much more happiness, more reliable source of happiness right through to the end of your life. You see, one of the themes of the inner treasures, the inner wealth that we develop, is developing this ability to recognize that where we cling, where we attach, we suffer. And what do we attach to? Well, of course, external wealth and material things is one thing, but the Buddha had us go right down to the root cause of our suffering, which is attachment to what we call the 5 khandhas. The groups of experience that he divided a human being up into. So the physical experience, the body, feelings, memories and perceptions, thought formations, and then sense consciousness. These 5 groups are what our mind clings to from day one when we're born. We cling to every feeling. We love pleasure, we hate pain. Every memory, memories of pleasure we love to cling to, memories of pain we still cling to, because we keep remembering painful experiences and suffering over and over again with them. Thought formations, where the real sense of I comes up, my plans, what I'm going to do, always planning, always thinking what I'm going to do next, what I've got to do. Sometimes we feel the burdens of all the responsibilities. I've got to do this, I've got to do that. Sometimes pleasure, the experience of pleasure takes over. I want this and I want that. I like this, I like that, so I want to get more of it. So thought formations we cling to. Sense consciousness, the senses, the 6 senses. That's the 5 external senses. And then the mind itself. These are the doorways to the world. and we cling to sense contact. We see, we hear, we taste, we touch, we smell, and we react. So pleasant sense contact we like, we react, we get pleasure, and then we want more of it, we want to hold on to it. Unpleasant sense contact, you see something and you don't like it, it brings you an unpleasant feeling, so you want to get rid of it. Human existence can be reduced down to this, to sense contact through our day. And depending on the kind of sense contact we have, when we're not always fully mindful, fully aware, well, we react. We cling, we react, we cling, and we become a certain way. So we become caught up in the pleasures and holding on to them and seeking more of them. We get caught up into the painful sense contact and trying to get rid of it, minimize it, afraid of getting more pain, and so on. But this is where we learn. This is where we bring all these qualities to bear. The Buddha encouraged us to develop more mindfulness and awareness and reflect on our experience every day and observe sense contact taking place. And most of the time we're just rushing through our day from one activity to the next, one place to the next, one person to the next. We're missing much of what's going on, and then we wonder why we're suddenly suffering. But we're clinging to this process. It's a process of cause and effect. We see something we like, it interests us, and this isn't a value judgment. It's not saying that's good or bad. It's just saying this happens. It happens. We see something we like, we get pleasant feeling, and we cling to that, and we want more, and we mentally start thinking about it, proliferating about the thing we like, how to get more, how to hold on to it, how to develop it, have a more intense kind of pleasure next time, and so on. Or we go the other way and we react with aversion, and I don't like this, I don't want this, this shouldn't happen to me. We go that way. So pleasure and pain leads to liking and disliking all the time through our day. What exposes this and reveals this to us is the practice of mindfulness. When practiced in conjunction with all the other good qualities I've been talking about, you develop mindfulness with some wisdom and learn to reflect on your experience. It starts to reveal what's going on. And we see this, our mind is constantly reacting to things, being pulled around by attraction, aversion. And you might say watching all this is quite tiring, frustrating to see the mind getting pulled around by its own desires based on sense contact and feelings. But then, even if you weren't to be practicing mindfulness and you weren't reflecting and learning from this, you'd still feel tired. As we all know, sense contact tires us out anyway. You go shopping for an afternoon, maybe not easy at the moment, but normally speaking, you go shopping for the afternoon and you feel tired because you've been bombarded by sense contact. You go to a social function, you feel tired. You go to work, you come home, you feel tired. Because our senses have been bombarded all the day with pleasant and unpleasant experiences, which we, if we're not very mindful, we take up, cling to the feelings, the perceptions, the thoughts that form around all those experiences. It's tiring. So this is why the Buddha encouraged us to practice developing samadhi as well, developing mindfulness, and from mindfulness we can develop states of calm. Because at least you get a rest, because you reduce the sense contact down to just a very minimal level. So like say you practice mindfulness of breathing. When you practice mindfulness of breathing, you're bringing all your attention down just to the sensation of the breath, which is fairly neutral. It can be quite pleasant. Unfortunately, sometimes it's unpleasant, especially if you have some kind of illness, but generally it's fairly neutral. And if you practice that with mindfulness and you're committed to that practice for however long you do it for 10 minutes, 30 minutes, and if you're doing it regularly in particular, you're developing mindfulness on the breath. You are naturally letting go of all this other sense contact for that period of time. So You're getting a good rest, which is where you get a lot of energy and your mind brightens up after practicing this regularly. Your mind starts to relax and enjoy the experience of letting go of sense contact. And this is where you see the supportive side of, say, the practice of sila, practice of generosity. All these other qualities support this practice of just letting go of the normal concerns for the world, your likes and dislikes, your worries about the future, regrets about the past. When you're with the breath, if only for a short period of time, you let all of that go, so you get a good rest. And you get the knowledge that these things can be let go of. I don't have to follow every thought all the time through the day. I'm allowed to let go of things. I don't have to follow every worry. I don't have to follow every regret and feel guilty about what happened last week. I can let these things go. I can put them down. I don't have to follow every expectation about the future, every fantasy, every worry about what's going to happen in the future. I can put them down as well. By practicing mindfulness, and particularly developing some inner calm through doing that, the sense of physical, mental relaxation helps you to let go of all these worries and stressful thoughts, or just random thoughts, distracted thoughts. And the mind settles down more and more in one place, feels more relaxed, calmer, brighter, and it's more aware. And the important thing is you're becoming familiar with this practice of letting go inwardly, letting go of thoughts, views and opinions, feelings, emotions. The mind and body start to relax, so your emotions start to feel more balanced. Thinking is more directed just to the practice of the meditation, so letting go of all the other stuff. And the very sense of self-identity with all the other stuff that we are normally just going along with, identifying with every thought, every feeling, every sensation in the body. You're putting all that down and developing that ability, the letting go mental muscle of putting things down, letting things go. That's improving, and the sense of self is even dissipating a bit. You might say you're developing a new sense of self. Well, that's all right. It's just the name you give to the experience. But the new sense of self is just the mind that is calm, body is calm. A lot of things we're normally clinging to and identifying with settle down. It gives you this state where you can now look back at your experience from a place of calm, stillness, and you can look with new eyes, fresh eyes on your own normal experience. And these are the eyes of wisdom. This is where you train wisdom, insight. You're looking back at all these thoughts, good thoughts, bad thoughts, distracted thoughts, worried thoughts, random thoughts. But now from this place of calm awareness, you can look at things and you don't have to grasp hold of them and identify so strongly with them. So you're learning to separate between the mind that knows and the mind that's calm, and then the objects of experience, the feelings, the thoughts, the memories, the body itself. And this is where we're learning to practice what the Buddha taught, the letting go of grasping and attachment to the 5 khandhas, the 5 groups of experience. And it's a great relief to the mind, even if only practiced briefly, and all of us take time to learn this skill. So that's why we need these noble treasures inside to support the practice, to keep uplifting the mind, coming back to the faith in the teachings, the sila, the hiriyottapa, the learning, the generosity, the wisdom. All these qualities are supporting that practice of letting go. And little by little, we develop the skill, the knowledge, the wisdom of letting go, and that's what frees the mind from suffering. If you've let go once, some of that experience will stay with you, not just for a day or a week. It might stay with you your whole life. Your mind changes a little bit. You let go a little bit, your mind changes a little bit for the better. You become a little bit wiser. And you can keep reusing that knowledge, that understanding over and over again. You learn to trust in it more. You learn to have it as a trusted a skill in the mind that you've seen work before. Can I use it again? So this is how meditators progress, and people following the Buddhist path progress. You know, they've heard something before, so they practice with it. They've had their own experience of letting go, and they can build on that, and they trust in it. So then they can let go of more things. You know, they can let go of more deeply held attachments to the sense of self, the identity, with this idea of who I am and who I've got to be and how things should be and how I want the world to be, and all the things that make up our experience of suffering, physical pain, mental pain. We get an insight that, oh, this can be let go of. Doesn't mean to say you'll have a totally pain-free existence, of course, but how you relate to pain, how you deal with it, you can change that for the better. You might say people who practice this become a little bit fanatic about it, but then if it's for our own good, well, why not? You know, I'm fanatical about the practice of mindfulness, letting go, developing the Buddhist path, because I see it's the best thing to do for a human being. That's my experience. And so if you're fanatical about it, well, you maybe keep telling other people about how good it is. But really, it's a personal experience, isn't it? You practice letting go for yourself. No one else does it for you. They can tell you what to do. They can encourage you to do it. But you have to taste it. You have to try it out for yourself. But once you have tasted it, well, then it gets easier and becomes more natural to you. Why hold on to some way of thinking that's causing you suffering if you can let it go and put it down, and you're better off. You know, it becomes more natural. So developing this inner wealth, the inner treasures of the mind, don't neglect that, I would say, through your life. We develop the outer wealth, of course. It's important, it's necessary to live in the world, but don't forget the inner wealth, because that's what's really going to sustain you all the way to the very last breath of your life. I often quote the Buddhist nun I used to know in Bangkok, who, a very good example of somebody who understood this point. When she was a mother, she had a family. She had about 8 children, if I remember right. While she was younger and she had her children, she put all her effort into her job to earn money and then raising her children. And she didn't have much time to meditate, study Buddhism, go to the monasteries and practice on retreat. She liked doing all those things, but she didn't have much time because she, as a mother, as a working mother, she had not much time available for her own personal practice. So she made her children her practice, and she put all her effort into bringing them up, caring for them, getting them to school, doing all the things that a parent does, and put all her effort into that. But she had this one eye on developing her inner treasure as well. She never forgot that. So as she got older and as her kids grew up, she was able to step back a little bit because they're able to take on more for themselves. So once they finally left school, went to higher education, left that, got jobs, she was putting more effort into her practice, and she got to the point where she said, enough, I don't need to look after my kids anymore, I've done that job. They're all working, some of them are getting married, some of them started to have their own kids. So she was in a position that she could leave home, so she became a Buddhist nun. She shaved her head, took on the precepts, went to live in a monastery, and for many years she was living in a monastery, and all her kids would come to see her, and at first they were all a little bit confused. What her daughter said, "Mum, it's like you've died." She said, well, I'm not dead, I'm still here, I'm still alive, but I've died from my past self, my past life. Well, I was a working mother, bringing up kids, now I've died from that, I don't need to do that anymore, you're all independent, you can manage. So yeah, I've died from that, but I'm still here, but now my mind is focused on the Dhamma, so like I'm reborn as a nun. And she just, one of these Buddhist fanatics, she just kept telling her kids, look, don't neglect your spiritual practice. Even though you're working now, earning money, setting up your own families, keep practicing the Dhamma. You'll find in the long run, this is what really is valuable to you. This is your real wealth. Keep meditating. And her kids are still in their 20s, earning money, having fun. So it's like, oh yeah, Mum, we'll do that when we're old like you. That's what most people think, isn't it? But she just kept hammering them with the same message year in, year out. They'd go and see her. When they started having their own children, they'd take the grandchildren to see her. And she just kept saying, practice the Dhamma, keep the precepts, practice your meditation. And she would meditate using the meditation word Buddho. Just keep reciting Buddho, Buddho. Whenever you're stressed, recite Buddho. Whenever you've got some spare time, do some meditation and recite Buddho. When you're walking to work, recite Buddho. And they were, at first they didn't really like what she had to say, but over time they acquired a taste for it and they realized, this is quite good advice. And as good children, they always said, Mum, what can we get you? What do you need? She said, I don't need anything, I just need Buddho. Just recite Buddho and you'll make me very happy. I don't need any material things, I've got enough. Because she's got this inner wealth, this inner treasure. And this went on for many years, till eventually her health started to get worse as she became much older. And so they built a kuti, like a granny flat, a kuti, a simple kuti for her at the back of the house, their city house. And so she came back from the monastery to live with them, where they could take care of her needs, get her to the doctor when she needed, feed her, and just make sure she was cared for. But she was still a nun. And every day it's the same old thing. They're going, Mum, what do you need? I need you to practice Buddho. But Mum, what do you need? I want you to meditate on Buddho. Same message over and over again till the very day she died. Mum, what do you need? Just recite Buddho, she said very quietly. And when she was 90 or something, she died. So a very good example of how to put effort into developing accumulating the ordinary wealth of the world as a foundation, but then when you got enough, to leave that and develop the wealth of the mind. And she died very peacefully and passed on this wealth to her children and grandchildren. I would say this is something to focus on, and especially at this time where the economy is going to take years to recover, no doubt. Maybe nobody will have quite as much wealth as before, but a few will, but many of us won't. Well, never mind. Develop the spiritual wealth, you'll find in the long run much more valuable. So that's my message for tonight. I wish you all well. I hope you have good health, and I hope you develop much wealth on the outside, but even more so, much wealth on the inside. Your noble wealth, your noble treasure. May you have lots of it. May it bring you enlightenment.